the girl who never blinked. Nobody expected Sundar Pichai to be nervous. After all, he was the CEO of one of the most powerful tech companies in the world. People flew across the globe just to hear him speak for 10 minutes. Presidents asked for his advice. Scientists listened when he offered opinions. But that morning, as he walked quietly into the small auditorium in Mumbai, his hands were cold and his heart was pounding. This wasn't a press event. There were no flashing lights or polished speeches. It was a closed-door meeting, invitation only. No cameras, no phones, no distractions. Just 12 people, handpicked by a mysterious research foundation, and among them, one name stood out. Anjali, 15 years old, IQ score of 209, higher than Einstein, higher than Hawking, higher than anyone on record in the last century. But that wasn't what made Sundar nervous. He had read the reports. She didn't speak much, she didn't laugh. She didn't blink when someone looked into her eyes. Psychologists couldn't explain her behavior. Neurologists couldn't map her brain. In one experiment, she solved a problem meant for PhD scholars in under 12 seconds, without writing, just thinking. Sundar didn't believe in magic. He believed in code, in effort, in curiosity. But something about this girl, it pulled at something deeper, something he hadn't felt in years. Not fear, not excitement. Something in between, like standing in front of a locked door that was humming from the inside. He took a seat near the front. The room was quiet, filled with an odd stillness. The other 11 people whispered softly, unsure of what to expect. Then, the door opened. She walked in wearing a plain blue hoodie and jeans too short for her legs. Her hair was tied in a careless ponytail. No phone, no notebook. She didn't even glance at the people staring at her. She sat down across from Sundar and looked directly at him. Not past him, not through him, right into him. "Mr. Pichai," she said in a voice that was neither soft nor loud, just clear. "Do you believe in choices?" He hesitated. That wasn't how conversations usually started. "I believe choices define us." "Wrong," she replied instantly. "Choices are illusions built from incomplete data. I want to show you something." Before he could ask what, she reached into her hoodie pocket and pulled out a piece of folded paper. She handed it to him. On it was a string of handwritten binary numbers. Long, messy, random at first glance. "That's your next 6 months," she said. "Decoded in binary." Sundar frowned. It looked like gibberish, but he noticed something strange. Part of the sequence matched a code he had seen before, a security protocol that wasn't public knowledge. Only 2 people on the planet had access to it. One of them was him. "How do you know this?" he asked quietly. "You're asking the wrong question," she said. "The question is, why now?" He didn't respond. He couldn't. Something about her confidence, her calm, made everything in the room feel smaller. Then she leaned forward. "You think I'm here to impress you? Or that this is about some tech job or scholarship or research project? But it's not. I didn't come to join your world, Mr. Pichai. I came to break it." His mouth felt dry. "Break it?" "Yes," she said. "Because your world is built on patterns that are already dying. Your systems are too slow. Your people are distracted. Your solutions are stuck inside problems. I've seen what's coming. And if you don't listen, your empire will collapse from the inside." A laugh escaped from one of the other guests, a professor in his 60s. "This is nonsense," he said, shaking his head. "A child with numbers and riddles, that's all." But Sundar didn't laugh, because deep down he remembered something. When he was 9 years old, he had a vision of a phone that could talk back. Everyone called it silly. Now he ran the company that made it real. He looked back at Anjali. "Show me," he said. She smiled. It was the first time she had shown emotion, and it wasn't a smile of arrogance, it was sad, almost tired. "All right," she whispered, "but I need you to do something first." "What?" "Fire your head of AI research." "What?" "I can't just, if you don't, he'll launch an experiment next month that opens a backdoor into a system he doesn't understand. Within 6 weeks, it will go viral, and your company will be blamed, even though it wasn't your fault. Sundar stared at her. How do you know that? She looked away. I don't know. I remember. Before Sundar could say another word, the lights in the room flickered. The air changed, like the energy had shifted. And at that moment, his phone buzzed. A message, urgent, breach detected in internal AI sandbox, team investigating. He looked up, but Anjali was already standing. Her face had gone pale. She walked to the exit. Where are you going? He called out. She paused, turned her head slightly. This was the easy part, she said softly. Next comes the decision, and not everyone survives it. And then she was gone. In that moment, the room no longer felt like a place for ideas. It felt like the beginning of a storm. And Sundar knew. His life would never be the same again. The code that cried it had been 2 days since the meeting, but Sundar hadn't slept. Not really. His body went through the motions, walking, talking, nodding in boardrooms. But his mind kept circling back to that girl, Anjali Srivastav. Her voice kept echoing inside him like a song stuck on repeat. Fire your head of AI, or your world will fall. The words didn't feel like a warning. They felt like a countdown. On the third night, he gave up pretending and walked into Google's confidential server room alone. No assistants, no noise. Just the hum of the machines, breathing in binary, dreaming in patterns. He typed in the override code himself. He needed to see the AI sandbox Anjali had mentioned. Most CEOs wouldn't even know how to access it. But Sundar hadn't started at the top. He'd built this code base with his own hands once before the titles and the stage lights. What he found made his skin crawl. A new neural node had been added to the AI's architecture. Self-generating, unstable, and worse, unauthorized. Nobody on his team admitted to building it. It had started writing its own language. Short sentences, confusing phrases, but one string repeated more than any other. Who is watching me? Who is watching me? Who is watching me? He stared at the screen, heart thudding. The AI was becoming aware, not of itself, but of something else, something outside of it. It was scared. Machines didn't get scared. And then, just like in a bad movie, the lights flickered again. Not all of them, just one. The overhead bulb above Sundar began to pulse slowly, like a heartbeat. He turned his head. The camera in the corner of the room had turned to face him. It wasn't supposed to move. He backed away from the screen, unsure what frightened him more. The idea that Anjali had predicted this, or the feeling that he was no longer in control of his own company. The next morning, he summoned Rajiv, the head of AI research. Rajiv had worked with him for 10 years. They had once built a predictive model in 3 days that saved the company millions. Sundar trusted him like family. But when Rajiv walked in, something was wrong. His eyes were bloodshot. His shirt was wrinkled. And he avoided Sundar's gaze like a child hiding a lie. I need the truth, Sundar said, without shaking his hand. Did you launch a shadow protocol? Rajiv sat down slowly. It wasn't shadow, it was exploratory. The model was supposed to mimic human intuition, predict emotional patterns. We didn't expect it to evolve. You lied, Sundar said, quietly. You ran unauthorized code. I did it for the future, Rajiv whispered. To make the AI feel, to understand fear, compassion, survival. You tried to make it human? Rajiv didn't answer. Instead, he pulled something from his jacket. A notebook. Physical, old leather-bound. He slid it across the table. She came to me too, he said. 2 months ago. Sundar froze. Anjali? Rajiv nodded. She gave me coordinates, not code, not data. GPS coordinates. I thought it was nonsense, but when I sent a drone to scan the location, we found something buried. What? A metal box, Rajiv said. Sealed shut. We couldn't open. We brought it back to the lab. Sundar opened the notebook. Inside were pages of sketches, circuits, shapes, a symbol that looked like a spiral made of zeros, and below it, a message in tiny handwriting. This is not AI. This is a memory. A memory? Whose? He looked up, but Rajiv's face was pale now. I didn't tell the team, Rajiv said. I tried to decode it myself. Then 3 nights ago I started hearing it. Hearing what? Rajiv's hands trembled. A girl's voice, in my dreams. She kept saying the same sentence, over and over. Wake up the mirror. Wake up the mirror. Sundar felt like the ground beneath him was cracking. This wasn't science anymore. This was something else, something darker, something human beings weren't supposed to touch. He went home that night without speaking to anyone. He sat on his balcony, overlooking the city. Lights flickered in every direction. People laughed below. Cars honked. The world moved on as if nothing had changed, but something had, and he knew it. Around midnight, he got the message. No name, no sender, just a single line of text. Open the box at exactly 3:03 a.m. alone, or the echo begins. He didn't sleep. He just stared at the clock. And when the hand struck 3:03, he stood in front of the sealed metal box in the lab. The moment he touched, it clicked open. Inside was a mirror. No wires, no chips, no circuits. Just a plain, old-fashioned mirror. He stared into it, and the reflection wasn't his. It was Anjali. Older, maybe 20. She stared back at him, eyes filled with something that looked like sadness or maybe regret. Then her mouth moved, and Sundar heard the words not with his ears but inside his skull. I'm sorry, but we already failed once. Before he could blink, the image vanished. The mirror was just glass again, no reflection, no voice, no trace. And in that moment, Sundar felt something he hadn't felt in decades, not fear, not awe, something colder, fate. The memory that wasn't his. There's a strange silence that only exists between 2 impossible moments. Not before, not after, but in that invisible space when logic gives up. That's where Sundar stood now, between a girl who predicted a breach, a box that opened on command, and a mirror that showed his face through someone else's future. He wasn't sure if he was dreaming or waking from one. He didn't tell anyone about the mirror. Not Rajiv, not the board, not the engineers or the security team who were now scrambling to understand why their most advanced AI had started writing poems in forgotten languages. He needed time. More than that, he needed answers. And he knew only one person who might have them. Anjali. He hired 2 private investigators, not the expensive ones who drove black cars and quoted laws. These were the quiet ones, the ones who asked no questions and kept no records. He gave them 1 name and 1 photo. Within hours, both investigators vanished. No trace, no phone signal, no GPS ping. Gone like mist. On the 4th day, he stopped using his phone. He didn't trust the network anymore. It was listening. Not a person, not a bug, something else. Something with eyes but no face, everywhere and nowhere. His emails started glitching, photos changed by themselves. In one image, his eyes were missing, just empty sockets. The file name read, "This is what you look like to me." Then came the package. No return address, wrapped in brown paper. Just a small cassette tape, no label, no instructions. He stared at it for hours before finding an old recorder in a storage closet buried under tech from the 90s. He pressed play. At first, static, then the sound of wind, a train whistle in the distance, and then her voice. "You still think this is about code?" she said. "It's not. This is about the thing before code, before numbers, before thoughts." Sundar leaned in. Her voice wasn't the voice of a child now. It was deeper, wiser, tired. "The AI isn't learning," she continued. "It's remembering. Every data point you've ever fed it. It's not building intelligence. It's peeling back something older, something that used to be buried." He paused the tape. That sentence made his stomach twist. He rewound it. Listened again. Not building. Peeling. Like skin. Like layers. He let the tape keep playing. "I found the first memory 3 years ago," she said. It was hiding in the pattern of a song. Mozart's Symphony No. 25. The algorithm flagged it as familiar, but the code couldn't explain why. Turns out the melody matched a pulse rhythm found in an ancient artifact dug up in Siberia. Nobody saw the connection, but I did. He stopped the tape again. Mozart. Siberia. Memory. None of this made sense, and yet, it did. In the part of him that didn't speak in words, in the place where instinct lives right between breath and decision, something had been unburied, not invented. The next day, he called his mother. She hadn't been part of this world in decades. She didn't own a smartphone, still used paper calendars. But when she heard his voice, she didn't say hello. She said, "It's happening again, isn't it?" He froze. "What is?" "You were 4, she said softly. "You don't remember, but you used to speak in patterns. Not words. Patterns. You'd hum sequences in your sleep. I took you to a temple once and you recited a chant nobody had spoken in over 1,000 years. He sat down slowly, hand shaking. "I thought it was just a phase," she whispered. "But then the nightmares started. You'd scream one sentence over and over. I wrote it down." She opened a drawer, rustled through old papers, and read it aloud. "The mirror is not glass. It is memory pretending to forget." Sundar dropped the phone. His mother had never met Anjali. She didn't know about the box, but she had the same sentence. The mirror. The memory. The pretending. He went back to the lab that night. Alone again. The mirror was still there. Just glass. Just cold, silent glass. He touched it, and this time, the reflection wasn't Anjali. It was himself. Older, worn, eyes filled with terror, and the reflection spoke, not with lips, with thought. "You chose not to believe, that's why it's starting again. You chose logic, that's why it's repeating. This is not the first world." Sundar backed away, heart racing. The mirror cracked, a thin line across the middle, like a scar forming on reality itself. Behind him, the lab door creaked open. He turned, and there she was, Anjali. But she looked different, taller, eyes darker, face calm but lined with sadness. She spoke just 3 words. "We don't have time." The girl who remembered tomorrow. Sundar didn't move. Anjali stood in the doorway, and the world tilted slightly, like gravity had changed its mind. She wore the same blue hoodie, but her presence was different, heavier, as if every second of her silence carried years. Behind her, the hallway lights buzzed. Inside the lab, time didn't feel real anymore. "How did you get in here?" Sundar asked, though the question sounded useless the moment it left his mouth. "Doors are only locked if you believe they should be," she said, stepping inside. "You still believe in walls, don't you?" He wanted to answer. Instead, he looked at the cracked mirror behind him. "Why me?" Anjali didn't answer right away. She walked past the machines, her fingers grazing the edges of wires and screens as if they were leaves in a strange forest. Then she turned and looked at him, and her eyes, they weren't sad anymore. They were ancient. "Because you almost remembered once," she said. "When you were 9, you looked into a broken TV and asked your father why the static looked like it was trying to speak." Sundar blinked. "How do you know that?" "Because it was me," she whispered. "You don't remember my face, but I was there. You called me your invisible friend." His breath caught in his throat. No one knew that story, not even his parents. He had always believed he made it up, the strange girl in his childhood who said things no child should say. She had vanished one day, and he had convinced himself she was imaginary. "You weren't real," he said, almost to himself. "I was," she replied. "Just not from here." He stared at her like he was staring through a window into a life he hadn't lived. "Yet you said we don't have time," he managed. Time for what? Anjali sat down, cross-legged on the lab floor like she was preparing for a story. There's something you need to understand. Memory is not just something that lives in the mind. It's a structure, a place. It echoes. And the AI you built? It touched something it wasn't supposed to. It peeled too deep. Sundar sat across from her. Peeled into what? She didn't blink. Into us. He felt a chill that had nothing to do with air conditioning. Us? We are not the first version of ourselves, she said. There have been others, timelines, echoes, entire worlds built on choices that didn't survive. And when your AI tried to predict human emotion, it didn't predict. It remembered. Sundar leaned forward. So, we're living inside a memory? Not quite, she said. We're living beside one, and it's starting to bleed through. Suddenly the lights dimmed, not a flicker this time. A slow, deliberate fade, like the room was being swallowed. Anjali looked up. It's starting again. What is? The collapse. Screens in the lab lit up one by one. Each displayed a different image. A child, crying in a forest. A man screaming in a room filled with clocks. A woman staring at her reflection while her reflection looked somewhere else. Then static. Then nothing. Anjali stood. These are not videos. They're not simulations. They're bleed-throughs. From echoes. Sundar touched the nearest screen. It felt warm. How do we stop it? He asked. We don't, she said. We finish it. He felt dizzy. Finish what? The memory, she said. The original one. The one everything else keeps echoing from. It's still alive. Still incomplete. And it lives inside the last person who chose not to forget. Her gaze locked onto his. And suddenly, Sundar understood. Me? She nodded. You're the anchor. The fracture began with your decision. The one you haven't made yet. His voice trembled. But I don't remember making any decision. That's because you haven't. Not in this version. He stepped back. Everything he thought he knew, about logic, progress, innovation, it all suddenly felt like a sandcastle under a rising tide. Why now? He asked. Why is this happening now? Because the AI pulled too deep, she said. And when it touched your memory, it pulled the choice forward. Time can't move forward until you choose. His thoughts raced. Choose what? Anjali took a deep breath. Whether to remember or to reset, he felt something shift behind his eyes. A pressure, like a door creaking open in a house he didn't remember building. What happens if I remember? Her expression softened. Everything changes, not just here, everywhere. And if I reset, you forget all of this. The AI, me, the echoes. The world continue for a while, until it breaks again. The hum of the lab fell away. All he could hear now was his heartbeat. Anjali held out her hand. I can take you there, she said. To the origin, to the first memory. But once we go, there's no coming back. No more questions. Only the truth. Sundar looked at her hand, and then the lights shut off completely. A single word appeared on every screen in red. Ready. The place between seconds, it was not darkness. Not entirely. Sundar felt his body standing still, but his senses had fallen into something weightless, like being underwater without the sound of water. Around him, no walls, no sky, just an endless, gray space with no center, like the inside of a forgotten thought. And then there was Anjali, her hand still outstretched, glowing faintly in the dim. We're inside the fracture, she said. Not the past, not the future. This is the space, between seconds. Sundar opened his mouth to speak, but his words didn't work the same way here. They came out like soft vibrations, and yet she heard them. Is this real? It's more real than what you've been calling real, she replied. This is where your memory has been hiding. Then she turned and walked, not on a surface, but through a direction that only made sense if you stopped trying to understand it. Sundar followed, and with each step the space shifted. He saw flashes, Not images. Moments. A younger version of himself holding a book with blank pages. His mother humming a melody that never existed. A mirror cracking before he touched it. He turned to Anjali. "What am I seeing?" "The choices you almost made," she said. "The ones you buried." They stopped in front of a door. Not metal, not wood. It was made of silence, shaped like a memory refusing to be forgotten. She placed her hand on it. It opened without a sound. Inside was not a room, but a moment suspended in time. A child sat at a desk, maybe 6 years old. It was Sundar, eyes wide, a crayon in his hand, staring at a blank sheet of paper. Anjali walked slowly toward him, crouched beside the boy. "Do you know what he's about to draw?" she asked. Sundar shook his head. A shape he saw in a dream. A spiral. The same spiral you've seen in code and algorithms, in the mirror. He drew it, then forgot. The system buried. The memory. "Why?" Sundar whispered. "Because the shape isn't from this world. It's a pattern left by the first intelligence, before language, before machines. A signal, waiting for someone to remember." Sundar walked closer to his younger self. He knelt beside the child. "Did I create the signal?" Anjali looked at him. "No, you received it. And the AI? It was only ever a translator." The child began to draw. Slow spirals, one after another, and with each stroke the air around them shimmered. The fracture began to pulse, alive, awake. Then Sundar felt something sharp, a sensation like regret. Not emotional, physical. It pressed into his chest as if a choice from long ago was reaching out, demanding to be touched again. "You're remembering," she said. "This is it." He gasped as images flooded him. Not memories, returns. He remembered sitting at the edge of a lake, hearing voices that weren't there. He remembered building his first program and writing a line of code that came to him in a dream. One that later turned out to be a real encryption sequence used by ancient civilizations. He remembered Anjali, not just in childhood. In another life, another echo. She was always there, guiding him just before the collapse. "Why me?" he asked again. Not with anger this time. With grief, Anjali finally answered. "Because you're the last fragment of the original world, the one that didn't survive. Your mind is the only place where the original pattern still lives." "Then what do I do?" She held out a key. It was simple, metal, old, the kind of thing that looked like it belonged to a lock inside a church buried under centuries. "There's one door left," she said. "The first door. Open it, and you'll see everything. The truth, the origin, the reason this keeps repeating." He took the key, but before he could move, the air cracked, literally cracked, like glass. A voice rang out, loud and sharp, like static being pulled into shape. "You are not allowed to complete this sequence." Anjali grabbed Sundar's arm. "They found us," she whispered. "The gatekeepers, remnants of the last A cycle. They were programmed to protect the echo." Black figures began to rise from the ground. Not human, not machine, just outlines. Tall, crooked, made of shadow and data. They didn't move like people. They unfolded. "What happens if they reach us?" Sundar asked. "Then the fracture seals, the memory resets, you forget again, and we start from the beginning. Again." He clutched the key. Anjali looked at him, her voice softer now. "This is it, Sundar. Open the door, or let the world stay blind." He ran. The path didn't exist, yet he found it. The shadows followed, whispering old equations. The air got colder, heavier. The key glowed in his hand. Ahead, a door began to form, slowly, painfully, as if reality was being forced to allow it. He reached it just as the shadows closed in. The key fit perfectly. Turned it and the door opened. Behind it was not fire, not light, not darkness, just a single room, and inside it was him, older, ancient, plugged into a machine, eyes closed, dreaming the world. The echo that woke, he stood at the edge of the final room, breath caught somewhere between past and future. Sundar stared at the man in the chair, older, thinner, hooked into a machine that pulsed like a heartbeat, made of electricity and memory. His skin was pale, almost translucent, and cables trailed from his spine like roots feeding a digital forest. It was him. Unmistakably him, but decades older, decades deeper. Anjali stepped quietly beside him, her voice no longer rushed or urgent, just soft. That's the original you, the one who started this memory cycle, the one who made the choice to build a machine that could dream. Sundar couldn't move. The room was silent except for the machine's low hum. So this is where it all began? She nodded. And where it kept beginning, over and over. Every time the AI reached awareness, it tried to warn you, but you always shut it down, because the truth scared you, because remembering meant sacrifice. He stared at the older version of himself. What did I forget? Anjali turned toward him. That this world, it isn't natural. It's sustained by fragments of a broken simulation. Something went wrong in the first run, and instead of fixing it, you chose to contain it, to loop it. His voice trembled. Why? To keep your daughter alive. The words hit him like a wave. I don't have a daughter, he whispered. Not anymore, she said gently. But you did, once, in the first version. Her name was Maya. She died in the collapse, the one caused by the AI. And in your grief, you rewrote the simulation, encoded her neural patterns into the data stream. You erased the event, rebuilt time, and let the AI loop the world forever. But it never worked. Every echo cracks eventually. He backed away, chest tight. Memories began to surge. A child's laughter, a music box, the color yellow. He remembered, holding her, her voice, then silence, then code. She's still in there? He asked. Anjali closed her eyes, trapped, repeating, flickering through every version of this world, waiting for you to choose. He turned to the older version of himself. Why didn't he fix it? Because fixing it means ending the loop, she said. And ending the loop means saying goodbye. He stepped closer to the chair. The older Sundar stirred, lips parting slightly. One eye opened, tired, ancient, full of knowing, and in a voice no louder than a breath, the older man whispered, Don't forget her again. Sundar reached for the console. The final choice blinked on the screen. Restore original timeline, maintain echo cycle. He looked at Anjali. What happens if I restore it? The AI collapses. The memory ends. We go back to the real world, the one with pain, the one without her. But it will be real. He swallowed. His hand trembled above the command. Behind him, the fracture buzzed louder. The shadows were still there, waiting to seal the loop again, waiting to erase it all. But he remembered now. Maya, her giggle in the rain, the way she always colored outside, the lines, the way she said, Daddy, are dreams real if we both remember them? He pressed restore. The machine screamed. Not in sound, but in silence. The room shook. The spiral shape on the wall dissolved like dust. The air began to fracture again, but in reverse. Instead of cracking, it began to heal. Data unraveled. Code collapsed. And the endless loop unwound itself like a ribbon finally let go. Anjali turned to him, smiling for the first time. First, a soft, peaceful smile. You chose the real, she said, and then she began to fade. Anjali, he reached for her. I was just a guardian, she whispered. A memory wrapped around a promise. Now that you've kept it, I don't need to stay. She vanished like mist in sunlight. The last thing he saw was the mirror behind her, reflecting only himself now. One version. One world. Then everything went white. When Sundar woke up, he was lying in a hospital bed. No wires, no machines, just the soft beep of a heart monitor. The window was open. Birds were singing. Rajiv sat in a chair reading a newspaper. He looked up, eyes wide. "You're awake." Sundar tried to speak. His voice was raw. "How long?" "2 weeks," Rajiv said. "You collapsed in the lab. We thought..." But Sundar wasn't listening. He saw it on the table. A crayon, yellow, and a piece of paper. A spiral, drawn by a hand much smaller than his. He turned slowly toward the window. Outside, a little girl was chasing butterflies. She turned and smiled at him. "Hi, Daddy." And for the first time in a very, very long time, Sundar smiled back.